My name is Wren, and the day I discovered my husband was trying to take control of my trust fund, I was standing in my kitchen with one hand inside a bag of coffee beans, wondering why my phone would not stop buzzing. It was a Tuesday morning, early enough that the windows were still gray and the house had that soft, half-asleep silence I used to love. Callum had already left for the office. He had kissed my temple on his way out, reminded me that we had dinner with my parents on Sunday, and told me to try not to work too late because, as he put it, I had been looking tired lately. I remember smiling at him, distracted, because I was thinking about invoices and an ugly spreadsheet waiting on my laptop. I remember the click of the front door behind him. I remember feeling ordinary. Then the email arrived. At first I thought it was spam or some legal newsletter I had accidentally subscribed to, because the subject line was dry and formal, revised guardianship petition and supporting exhibits. I almost deleted it. But my name was in the preview text. Not just my first name, not a vague reference. Wren Okonkwo, proposed ward. I opened it with the absent curiosity you feel when something makes no sense yet. It took only a few seconds for that curiosity to become a cold, physical feeling, as if the floor had shifted beneath me and my body had not caught up. The email was from Callum's attorney. It was clearly not meant for me. The greeting used Callum's name, and when I looked closely at the address line, I saw what had happened. One letter was wrong in the email address. One small typo that had sent his lawyer's draft to me, instead of to him. Attached was a petition asking the court to appoint Callum as guardian over my finances, because I supposedly had a documented pattern of alcohol dependency that impaired my judgment and made me vulnerable to reckless decisions regarding my own money. My own money meant my grandmother's trust. My grandmother, as in, had been a practical woman. She believed love should come with instructions, because people were sentimental and money made them foolish. When she died, she left me a modest but life-changing trust, structured carefully so I could not be pressured, manipulated, or sweet-talked into draining it before I was old enough to know what I wanted. I received funds for approved expenses through an independent trustee, and the trust would fully disburse to me when I turned 35. At that point, it would be entirely mine. I was 33 when I opened that email. 2 years from full control. 2 years from Callum having no way to influence the trust unless I chose to let him. The petition was not vague, it was polished. It claimed I drank secretly. It claimed I became disoriented at family gatherings. It claimed Callum had taken on the painful role of monitoring me, protecting me from myself, and preventing me from making financial decisions during periods of intoxication. It referred to attached exhibits, photographs, a log of incidents, and a physician's letter recommending oversight of my financial decision-making. I clicked the photographs first, because some part of me was still trying to find the mistake. There I was at my friend Maya's birthday dinner, holding a glass of wine while laughing at something across the table. There I was at my company's holiday party, my cheeks flushed from dancing under overheated lights. There was a close crop of my hand around a champagne flute, the rest of the room cut away. There was a picture of me leaning against Callum's shoulder in the back of a rideshare after the holiday party, my eyes closed. I remembered that night. I had been exhausted, not drunk. I had been wearing painful shoes. I had told him my feet were killing me, and he had laughed and said, "Lean on me, baby." Now that same moment had a caption beneath its subject, unable to remain upright without spouse's assistance after consuming alcohol. The log was worse because it sounded so reasonable. Date, time, location, behavior observed. Dinner with parent, spouse noted slurred speech. Friend's birthday. Subject consumed multiple drinks and became argumentative. Work event, subject unable to walk steadily. Saturday evening at home. Subject found asleep on couch beside unfinished glass of wine. Each entry was small, controlled, almost clinical. Each one took some ordinary moment from my life and placed it under a dirty light. I read the physician's letter last. It was written on letterhead from a doctor, whose name I did not recognize, a man named Dr. Lionel Pritchard. He wrote that, based on the information provided, I appeared to show signs consistent with alcohol dependency and impaired judgment, and he recommended that financial oversight be considered to protect my long-term interests. Based on the information provided, I had never met him. I had never spoken to him. I had never been evaluated for alcohol use by anyone. I drank socially, occasionally, like most of the adults in my family. A glass of wine at dinner, a cocktail at a party. Sometimes nothing for weeks because I forgot alcohol existed, unless someone put a menu in front of me. The idea that I had a secret dependency would have been laughable if the documents in front of me had not been so official. My hands were shaking. Coffee beans scattered across the counter because I had forgotten I was holding the bag. I wanted to call Callum immediately. I wanted to scream his name into the phone and ask him what kind of monster slept next to a woman while preparing to have her declared incapable of managing her own life. Instead, I closed my laptop. I stood in the kitchen and breathed through my mouth until the first wave of panic passed. I knew Callum. I knew how quickly he could turn a conversation. He was charming in a way that made disagreement feel rude. If I confronted him that morning, he would say I misunderstood. He would cry if crying helped. He would call me unstable for reacting. He would have time to warn his attorney, edit the petition, delete messages, and call my parents before I did. So I did the hardest thing I had ever done in my marriage. I made coffee. I wiped the beans from the counter. I forwarded the email to a new account Callum did not know I had. Then I sat down and searched for an attorney who specialized in guardianship and capacity disputes. By noon, I was in the office of Priscilla Nakamura, a woman with silver hair cut sharply at her jaw, and the calmest voice I had ever heard. She read the documents without interrupting me. Every few minutes, she made a note on a yellow legal pad. When she finished, she leaned back and asked, "Has any physician ever examined you regarding alcohol use, cognitive impairment, or financial capacity?" "No," I said. "Never." "Have you ever been treated for alcohol dependency?" "No." "Any arrests, workplace complaints, medical incidents?" "No." She tapped the physician's letter once with the end of her pen. Then this is the part that worries me most, and also the part that may unravel fastest. A legitimate capacity opinion requires more than a spouse's story. If this doctor never examined you, we need to know exactly what he was told and whether he understood his letter would be used in court. I asked whether I should move out that day. Priscilla did not answer quickly, which I appreciated. She asked whether I felt physically unsafe. I said no. She asked whether Callum had access to my private accounts, my devices, my passwords, my trusty correspondence. I said he knew too much about my routines, but did not have my passwords. She told me to change them anyway, quietly. She told me to preserve everything. She told me not to confront him yet. "If he knows you know," she said, "we'll adapt. Right now we have the advantage of seeing the version he intended to file. We should use that." She gave me the name of a private investigator, Marisol Vance, who worked on financial abuse cases. Within 48 hours, Marisol had been retained. She was small, direct, and unsentimental, with reading glasses she wore on a chain, and a way of asking questions that made silence feel useful. She wanted dates, names, family gatherings. Every time Callum had mentioned my drinking in front of someone else. That was when the past year began rearranging itself in my memory. At my father's birthday dinner, when I ordered a second glass of wine after a long week, Callum had smiled and said, "Let's pace ourselves, Wren." Everyone laughed. I had rolled my eyes, annoyed but not alarmed. At Thanksgiving, when my aunt offered me rum cake, he had touched my lower back and said, "Maybe just a small piece." My mother had looked up quickly, then looked away. At Maya's birthday, when I came back from the restroom, Callum had swapped my cocktail for water and told the table, "I'm helping her behave." It had embarrassed me, but he said it lightly, and the moment passed. At home, if I poured wine while cooking, he sometimes photographed the counter under the pretense of capturing the meal. If I fell asleep during a movie with a half-finished glass nearby, he would joke the next morning that I had passed out. When I objected to the phrase, he kissed my forehead and told me not to be so defensive. Over and over, he had planted the same seed in different soil. Not an accusation, not a fight, just concern, wrapped in humor, repeated often enough that people began to expect it. Priscilla contacted Dr. Pritchard first. She did it formally through his office, with a letter that included my signed authorization for him to discuss any alleged evaluation. The response came faster than I expected. He had never examined me. He had never spoken to me. He had participated in one phone consultation with Callum, who described a wife in denial, a family afraid to intervene, and a trust fund that might soon be at risk if no one stepped in. Callum had sent him cropped photographs and the incident log. Dr. Pritchard had written what he called a preliminary recommendation, based on collateral information, assuming it would lead to an actual evaluation before any court filing. When he learned his letter had been attached to a guardianship petition, as if it were medical support, he was, in Priscilla's words, deeply troubled. He agreed to withdraw the letter immediately and provide a written statement clarifying that he had never examined me and could not offer a diagnosis or capacity opinion. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt sick, because the doctor withdrawing the letter proved Callum had misled him, but it also proved how close the lie had come to becoming official. One polite phone call, a few cropped pictures, a concerned husband using the right vocabulary. That was all it had taken to put medical-looking language between me and my own autonomy. The next 2 weeks were the strangest days of my life. I lived inside my marriage like an undercover version of myself. Callum came home and asked what was for dinner. I answered. He left his shoes in the hallway. I stepped around them. He told me stories about work, complained about traffic, kissed the back of my neck while I washed dishes. At night he slept beside me, with one hand thrown across the sheets, and I stared at the ceiling, listening to him breathe, thinking about the petition sitting in Priscilla's office. There were moments when the performance nearly broke me. One evening he found me standing in the laundry room, holding one of his shirts, unable to remember why I had gone in there. He leaned in the doorway and said, gently, "You've seemed a little off lately. Is everything okay?" For one wild second I wondered if he was testing me. Maybe he wanted me to snap. Maybe he needed a fresh incident for the log. I forced myself to smile. Work stress. He watched me for a beat too long. "You'd tell me if something was going on, right?" "Of course," I said. I had never lied to him like that before. The fact that it hurt me even then made me angry. He was trying to have me declared financially incompetent, and some loyal part of my heart still flinched at deceiving him. During those 2 weeks, Marisol built the picture Callum had tried to keep hidden. His business was failing. Not wobbling, not going through a rough quarter, but bleeding money. He owned a small logistics consulting firm and had always described it as stable, sometimes even boringly healthy. He told my parents he was proud to be self-made. He told me he did not need my trust, did not want my trust, and found it insulting when people assumed he had married me for money. Marisol found nearly $200,000 in undisclosed business debt accumulated over 18 months. Loans, vendor balances, a maxed line of credit. Payments made late, then later, then not at all. He had borrowed from 2 friends and 1 cousin. He had moved money between accounts in a pattern that looked, to Marisol, like a man trying to keep several fires hidden under the same rug. The timing was not subtle. As his debt deepened, his comments about my drinking increased. As my 35th birthday came closer, his concern became more organized. The petition was not a desperate impulse. It was a project. Priscilla explained what guardianship over my finances could have meant. If Callum had been appointed, he could have positioned himself as the person making decisions for my benefit. He would not simply receive a check and walk away. It would have looked respectable. He could request access for expenses, management protection, debt avoidance, professional fees. He could stand between me and the money my grandmother had deliberately protected from pressure. And because the trust was approaching full disbursement, he had a reason to act before I turned 35. That detail hurt in a particular way. My grandmother had designed the trust to shield me from exactly this kind of coercion. Callum had tried to use the court to become the pressure she had anticipated. While Marisol followed the money, Priscilla prepared our response. She also told me to think carefully about my family. Callum's petition relied on them more than they knew. It referred to relatives who had allegedly observed concerning behavior. It did not include sworn statements yet, but his log named family gatherings and described reactions. He had been creating witnesses out of people who thought they were only hearing a husband worry. I wanted to call my mother. I wanted to ask whether she believed him. But Priscilla advised me to wait until we had the physician's withdrawal and the financial evidence in hand. People often defend the first story they accepted, she said. Give them documents, not just your fear. So I waited. When the time came to confront Callum, I did not do it at home. I refused to give him our living room, our wedding photos, our shared furniture as scenery for whatever performance he chose. Priscilla arranged a meeting in her conference room. She invited Callum through his attorney, framing it as a discussion regarding the guardianship filing. He arrived in a navy suit I had helped him choose, carrying a leather folder I had given him for our second anniversary. For a moment, seeing him there made the whole situation feel unreal. He looked like my husband. He looked like the man who knew how I took my tea, who rubbed my calves during migraines, who once drove 3 hours in the rain, because I had left my grandmother's ring at a hotel. My body recognized him before my mind could remind it what he had done. Then he saw me sitting beside Priscilla, and his face changed. Not dramatically. Callum was too practiced for that. But something tightened around his eyes. He looked from me to Priscilla to the folder on the table, and he understood that I knew. His attorney began with careful language about concern, family distress, difficult decisions. Priscilla let him speak for less than a minute before placing Dr. Pritchard's withdrawal letter on the table. Then she placed the doctor's statement beside it. Then copies of the uncropped photographs, obtained from Maya and from the holiday party photographer, showing normal rooms, normal people, normal social drinking. Then Marisol's financial summary. Callum's attorney stopped talking. Priscilla's voice stayed even. Your petition represents that Mrs. Okonkwo was evaluated by a physician whose professional opinion supports financial guardianship. That physician has confirmed he never examined her. Your exhibits represent isolated moments as evidence of dependency while omitting context you had available, and the timeline of these allegations overlaps with significant undisclosed debt incurred by your client. Callum looked at me then. Wren, this isn't what it looks like. I almost laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because those were the words people use when they are standing in the wreckage holding the hammer. What does it look like? I asked. He swallowed. I was worried about you. Maybe I handled it badly, but I was worried. Your family was worried too. That sentence landed exactly where he aimed it. Your family was worried too. Even exposed, he reached for the chorus he had built. Priscilla leaned forward. A genuinely concerned spouse does not crop photographs to misrepresent their content. A genuinely concerned spouse does not present a doctor's preliminary letter as if it were an examination. A genuinely concerned spouse does not conceal $200,000 of business debt while seeking control over his wife's approaching trust distribution. A Callum's attorney said his name quietly, a warning. But Callum was looking at me, and for the first time since I had known him, his charm had nowhere to go. He tried anger next. He said I had always been sensitive about the trust. He said my grandmother's money had made me suspicious. He said he had sacrificed for our marriage while I kept assets separate. Then he tried sorrow. He said he was drowning. He said he had not wanted to burden me. He said he had convinced himself that if he could just stabilize things, we would both be okay. By having me declared incapable, I asked. He closed his eyes. That was the closest thing to an answer I got before the polished version collapsed. Yes, the petition was about money. Yes, he had exaggerated. Yes, he knew the photos did not show what the captions claimed. Yes, he had hoped my family would support him, because they had already heard enough over the past year to believe there might be a real problem. He did not say it like a villain confessing. He said it like a tired man explaining why he had taken a wrong turn and kept driving. That almost made it worse. There was no grand hatred to point to, no single explosive betrayal. There was only entitlement, fear, and the quiet calculation that my credibility was something he could spend. The court dismissed the guardianship petition entirely. Priscilla filed our response with Dr. Pritchard's withdrawal. His statement, the corrected photographic context, and Marisol's evidence of Callum's undisclosed debt. She requested sanctions for a petition supported by knowingly fabricated and misleading evidence. The judge did not need theatrical speeches. The documents were enough. Callum's attempt to cast himself as a protective husband did not survive contact with the facts. I filed for divorce the same week. People imagine that leaving after a betrayal feels clean because the decision is obvious. It does not. The decision can be obvious and still feel like cutting through your own life with a dull knife. I packed books we had bought together. I divided plates from our wedding registry. I found receipts from trips where I had been happy. I found birthday cards in his handwriting, full of tenderness that had either been real once or convincing enough that the difference no longer helped me. My parents came over 2 days after I filed. My mother looked smaller than usual, as if guilt had changed her posture. My father brought food because that is what he does when emotions exceed his vocabulary. For a while we sat at my dining table with containers of stew and rice between us, nobody eating much. My mother was the first to say it. We should have asked you. I wanted to be generous. I wanted to tell her it was all right. It was not all right. Yes, I said. You should have. She cried then, quietly. She told me Callum had never come to them with one dramatic accusation. It had been smaller than that. A comment after dinner. A worried look when I ordered wine. A private call asking whether they had noticed me seeming different. He told them he was afraid of embarrassing me. He told them he did not want to make me defensive. He asked them to watch. And once people are asked to watch for a pattern, they start seeing every ordinary thing as part of it. My father admitted he had begun counting my drinks at family events. My aunt had asked my mother whether I was under stress. My cousin had mentioned that Callum seemed like a saint for being so patient. None of them had come to me directly, because Callum framed my supposed defensiveness as part of the problem. If I denied it, that would only prove I was in denial. That was the trap I could not stop thinking about. The accusation had been designed so my resistance became evidence. If I was calm, I was hiding it. If I was angry, I was unstable. If I drank nothing, I was performing sobriety. If I had one glass, I lacked control. Callum had built a room with no doors, and then invited my family to stand outside it, nodding. Priscilla later called it a particularly insidious form of financial abuse. She said fabricated substance abuse narratives can be powerful because they do not require a forged signature at the beginning. They require repetition. They require plausible concern. They require people close to the target to mistake familiarity for proof. By the time a court sees the story, it may appear to have many sources, when really it has one source echoed through many mouths. Dr. Pritchard's letter was Callum's undoing, because it was the one part of the scheme that had to touch an outsider with professional obligations. Once the doctor understood he had been used, the medical support evaporated. Without that letter, the photographs looked like what they were: cropped snapshots from normal social events. The log looked like what it was: a husband's private fiction, dressed in timestamps. Priscilla also worked with my independent trustee to document the entire episode in the trust records. Not because we expected Callum to try again after the divorce, but because false narratives have a way of lingering. Now, if any future guardianship attempt or capacity question appears, there is a record showing that a prior petition was dismissed after evidence of fabrication. My trustee, a reserved man who usually communicated in tidy paragraphs, called me personally after reviewing everything. "Your grandmother chose this structure for a reason," he said. "We will honor that reason." I cried after that call harder than I had cried in weeks. Grief came in layers. I grieved my marriage, of course. I grieved the version of Callum I had believed in. But I also grieved the ease with which I used to move through rooms. For months after the petition, whenever I reached for a wine glass at dinner, I felt eyes that might not even be there. I stopped drinking entirely for a while, not because Callum had been right, but because he had made the simplest choice feel contaminated. Then one night, at Maya's apartment, she poured herself wine and asked if I wanted tea, seltzer, wine, or nothing at all, with no weight in the question. I chose wine because I wanted it with pasta, one glass. No performance, no proof, Just a glass of wine. Maya raised hers and said, to context. I laughed for the first time in what felt like months. My family and I are still repairing things. Forgiveness for me has not meant pretending the harm was small. It has meant letting them do the uncomfortable work of understanding exactly how they became useful to a lie. My mother no longer accepts concern about someone without asking whether anyone has spoken directly to that person. My father apologized not only for believing Callum, but for being relieved that someone else seemed to be handling it. That apology mattered because it named the convenience. It is easier to trust the calm person offering a plan than the person being quietly cornered. As for Callum, the divorce stripped away the last of his explanations. Once lawyers were involved and money had to be disclosed, his debts became impossible to romanticize. He sent me one long email months later, apologizing in a way that still circled his own desperation more than my pain. He wrote that he had lost himself. He wrote that he never meant for it to go as far as it did. I did not respond. Some messages are written to relieve the sender, not repair the damage. I am 35 now. The trust has fully vested. The money is mine, but I think about it differently than I once did. When I was younger, the trust felt like a distant inheritance, a promise my grandmother had placed behind glass. Now it feels like a boundary she built before I knew I would need one. I manage it carefully. I meet with the trustee and financial advisors because I choose to, not because anyone has questioned my capacity. I ask more questions. I read documents before signing. I keep records. These habits do not feel paranoid to me. They feel like adulthood with the lights on. The hardest lesson was not that someone could lie about me. I knew, in theory, that people lied. The hardest lesson was that someone who knew my routines, my family, my soft spots, and my history could arrange ordinary facts into a weapon and count on love to make everyone slow to challenge him. Callum did not need to invent a wild scandal. He needed a glass in my hand, a tired expression in a car, a family trained to hear concern in his voice, and a court system that takes the word guardianship seriously, because sometimes people truly do need protection. That is what still chills me. He borrowed the language of care to attempt control. He called it concern when it was access. He called it protection when it was debt. He called me impaired because my independence stood between him and money he believed he could rescue himself with. When I think back to that Tuesday morning, I sometimes wonder what would have happened if the email address had been typed correctly. Maybe the petition would have been filed before I knew. Maybe my family, already primed, would have offered hesitant statements. Maybe Dr. Pritchard's letter would have sat in the file long enough to make the lie look medical. Maybe I would have spent months proving I was not the person my husband had described. One wrong letter saved me, but it should not take a typo to protect someone from being rewritten by the person closest to them. I still live in the same city. I still see my parents on Sundays. Sometimes there is wine on the table, sometimes there is not. No one counts. No one jokes about keeping an eye on me. If concern comes up now, it comes directly, with respect, and with room for an answer. And every so often, I hear my grandmother's voice in my head, stern and loving, telling me that instructions matter. She left instructions for the money. Callum left instructions for a lie. I survived because, for once, I followed the evidence instead of the emotion pulling me toward confrontation. I kept my trust. I lost my marriage. I gained a sharper understanding of how quiet financial abuse can be before it shows its teeth. It does not always begin with stolen passwords or forged checks. Sometimes it begins at Thanksgiving, with a hand on your back and a husband saying, maybe just a small piece, while everyone around you learns to mistake control for care. If you know someone who needs to hear this, share this video with them. Thank you for being here. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.